what I prefer is if you're going to pitch a story, like just give me a couple sentences about it real quick so I can just get to the point.
Welcome to Media Coffee, the podcast by PR Newswire, a Cision company. I'm your host, Sami Saad, and in this series, we explore the latest trends and best practices in the world of PR, communications, and media. In today's episode, I'm joined by Nicole Schuman, the managing editor of PR News. We'll be covering a range of topics, including best practices for engaging with journalists in the PR communication space, the biggest mistakes that PR professionals still make in 2025, and how to maximize the impact of press releases. One key takeaway from our conversation is that journalists are overwhelmed with jargon-filled pitches. If your message isn't clear and accessible, it's getting ignored. So grab your coffee and let's jump in. Hi, Nicole. Thank you so much for joining us. How are you doing today?
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Doing okay. Doing okay.
Awesome. So let's begin by, your background. Can you tell us how you got started in journalism and what led you to your current role as a managing editor at PR News?
It's been a long road. I actually went to undergrad for journalism at St. Bonaventure University, go Bonnies. Um, and the first couple of years of my career, I actually worked in PR and marketing, communications role for nonprofit, a couple startups. The area I lived in, it was hard to get a journalism job back in the day. But I was always writing on the side. I was always doing freelance, whether it was for my local school board or features for the local newspaper. I think one of my favorite pieces I wrote was on a pinball club in Buffalo, New York. So I was always, trying to keep up. I always kept chasing the journalism dream. I worked in social media for about 10 years. So that actually helped bring me to New York, where I expanded my network. And I started with PRNEWS in 2019 as a content manager, really reporter, but that was the title they gave us. And worked my way up from there to senior editor, and I became managing editor about a year ago. So it's a organization that's been around for a long, 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 long time, and started out as a little newsletter, and now we're a big website with events and newsletters and articles and all sorts of things. So just goes to show, don't give up on your dream. It will come around when it's supposed to come around. So yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Congratulations on becoming the managing editor. That was just recently. So yeah. And so as your current role in PR News, have you observed any trends that you've, seen in the last couple of years that you'd like to share with us?
Oh, I mean, so many things have been changing thanks to technology, as they always do. Obviously the advent of AI has changed a lot of the processes for PR, and for PR practitioners and communicators, from content creation to press release distribution to media lists to all sorts of things. Last year around this time, I was getting a ton of press releases that I know were written by AI. You can just tell after
I'm
a
sure.
certain but bout of seeing them quite a bit. But that seems to have died down. I think people get to know and how to use platforms and what they like about them, what they don't like about them. And people are kind of honing in their skills a little bit there now. Other things I've noticed, obviously it's been a couple years since the real depths of the pandemic. In person's definitely back. I've had more coffee meetings and things than I have, for a long time, which is nice because you really get to know people on a certain level and personally. And if you have time for that, it's just a nice way to connect and kind of see what people are concerned about, or, what they're working on. It's great for story ideation. Um, and it's great just to, get to know people beyond their titles in the industry. So that's been really great. And a lot of companies, over the past like probably 5, 6 years ago, they were more getting into online newsrooms on their website. It seems like a lot of people are now obviously shifting to LinkedIn, and putting a lot of their company information there, creating newsrooms there in terms of, they're sending out newsletters. They are putting together, different videos of their CEOs, of leadership statements, those sorts of things. People are sharing a lot of news directly to social media as opposed to just directing people to their website. So I think that's interesting. It's a different audience you can reach, but it's also going to be interesting for search, depending on how SEO is taking things in terms of social posts and whatnot and this and
Mhm.
that. So when journalists are trying to search for information, it is making things a little bit more interesting. So those are just a few of the things that I've been seeing. Seems like there's been a lot of mergers and acquisitions. We don't cover that in PR news per se, but I do get a lot of notices and things like that. So that has been interesting. As bigger organizations bring in, I think more specialized agencies and whatnot. I'm thinking about things in terms of influencers or, content creators, uh, you know, um, recruiting for PR in general, if you're a really big firm. So that's been kind of interesting too.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. I feel like you're probably getting a lot of press releases in mergers and acquisitions that you just mentioned. So we'll talk about press release later, but let's focus a little bit on communicating with journalists and especially in 2025. What are some of the biggest mistakes that you still see PR professionals make? And I saw your LinkedIn background and I found it hilarious because it's true as well. And it says that good morning, media contact instead of your name, which is, a very common
In
mistake.
parentheses. Oh, yes. Yes.
Yes. So do you want to share a
Um,
little bit more about that?
yeah, and a lot of mistakes are just they've kind of they're traditional mistakes. They've been going on for years. Things like misspelling my name, using the wrong name. I don't know if it's part of automation or AI or things like that, but the other day I got called Norm. For me, I think it takes 2 seconds to kind of reread a pitch or an email just to make sure you have the main things correct, that you're sending them to the right person, to the right outlet. I can't tell you how many times I've been pitched as the wrong publication. I know a few of publications, we have similar names. There's PR News, PR Week, PR Daily, but we all do different things. And I usually give people give them one chance. If they kind of screw that up, but if they do that again, then that kind of stuff, it just kind of shows how much care you put into something. The other thing is, I've been starting to get pitches on LinkedIn. I don't like getting pitched on social media channels. Um, I have enough, to deal with as it is. And a lot of those too, I use, for my personal use. Um, my work email is listed on LinkedIn on my profile. So if you don't have my email, go there. Or if you're going to message me on social, just ask me for my email and send me an email with your pitch, rather than putting an entire pitch uh, in that like a message platform, because it doesn't really work for me. I try to keep everything in one place. So email is the best for me. I mean, other journalists may feel differently, but that's really what works for me overall.
Yeah, that's interesting to know. It's good for, people that are trying to reach out to you to know that. So let's talk about what are the, best ways that you can build a long-lasting relationship, a fruitful relationship with a reporter. Do you have
Well,
any
first
advice
off,
on
spell my name right. I will remember that.
number one?
It's not an odd name to spell. Second of all, know what I write about. I can't tell you the number of pitches I get that have nothing to do with what I write about. pitches for art or pitches for fragrance, which I enjoy, but it, it just has nothing to do with me. So more than likely, those always go in the trash. Um, that's what I, and also too, if I'm meeting with someone in person or doing um, just a Zoom call, it really like goes the extra mile when they're like, oh, I saw what you wrote about blah 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 that really resonated with me, or I learned this from this. I mean, flattery, will get you everywhere. But it's just nice to know that someone took extra time to do a little bit of research on what you actually do. So that really helps. Lasting connection. If you pitch me something, please don't follow up with me every day for the next week. Give me space. We have a lot of email. Everyone has a lot of email, and we have a lot of things going on. So
Yeah.
when you do that over and over and over, it kind of almost, I know people aren't doing it on purpose, but almost serves as a disrespect to everything else we have going on. And that's kind of a big turnoff for working together in the future. So yeah, just
Yeah.
just be yourself and be chill, and that's really goes a long way.
Let's talk about story mining and where do you develop your ideas for topics, stories? Do you have an editorial calendar and so on?
We do have an editorial calendar, so like I was saying, we pay attention to seasonal things, things going on in culture. It's Black History Month, so we like to highlight some, Black PR professionals, same thing, History Month, those sorts of things. Um, where we come up with ideas. Basically, I do a lot of talking to other PR professionals, kind of see what they're working on. I had a great meeting this morning with someone that works in media training and the different ways that they're approaching media training now, which is, it's definitely something you need to have right now for CEOs and leadership and even people on your own PR team. So we're talking about the different evolution in that space, which came up with a couple good ideas from that. Whether we write it, whether they do a contributor piece, kind of talk about that. I also look a lot at our data in terms of what's getting page views, see what topics are popular on our site, and kind of extract some ideas from there. If it's something we haven't talked about in a long time, if it's something we need a refresher on, for example, today we published a piece on crisis drills, just like a how-to, with a lot of offerings from experts on how they do them. Um, just in case, people haven't done them in a while, or if they've never done one, kind of there to help them with that. Because crisis articles are always big on our site, any kind of reputation. So that was kind of where that came from. Um, Outer, platforms that I look at, Reddit has a really active PR community. So I take a look at that sometimes. There's a lot of students on there, so it's kind of interesting to get things from a different perspective. Social media, all of the platforms have different groups in regards to PR and what people are talking about. And then the biggest thing we probably do is just look at current events and think about them from a PR lens, from a communications lens. That's usually how I come up with the ideas for PR Roundup every week, which comes out on Thursdays. I think it's important. The news can be overwhelming, but it's also important to look at it in our industry from that aspect. Because I think a lot of people are dealing with a lot of the different things, on a different scale, that are going on in the news and need some guidance as to where to go PR wise. Um, and lastly, sometimes I just ask full out on LinkedIn. I'll just put up a question. What would you like to see more of? What would you like? What have you seen enough of? What are some things that you're looking at right now or working on? So that's, that's where a lot of what we talk about comes from.
That's awesome. So there's multiple ways that you source your stories from, obviously. What about press releases? What is your take on press releases? How do you like to receive them as well?
I think I hear this question about 4 times a week, but it's good. It's like it's always evolving. It never changes. For me, I like them in an attachment or in at the end of a pitch email. What I prefer is if you're going to pitch a story, like just give me a couple sentences about it real quick so I can just get to the point. And then if I'm interested, if I want more information, further information, I'll open the attachment or I'll, scroll further down in the email for more information. Um, I always, a lot of times, like, especially for a roundup, if it's a study that comes out or something like that, it's easy for me to just take like, I'm like, oh, okay, this is good for our readers. I'll open and I'll take, some of the data points from press release if they're included, as well as, it's really hard to go back and forth and get quotes. Put a good quote in your press release, please. Do not just make it so and so is excited about the opening of XRX or, whatever. Like, great, we're happy you're excited, but give us something that, people can kind of take away and learn from, which I think helps. But yeah, I don't mind press releases, but I don't want them to be just like the entire thing. And I do think you can kind of separate them from an actual pitch. I
Mhm.
think the actual pitch is more, you're just really putting your idea out there in as few words as possible.
Yeah, and we do really emphasize that in Cision and PR Newswire that having a great quote is crucial to your press release. So
Mhm.
make sure you put enough time and effort into those quotes. And yeah, so that's great to hear. And do you have any specific tone, length, format, or like when it comes to press releases, any images, multimedia, or what is the
Um,
preference there?
if it's an event or if it's for a product or something like that, I do like if images are included. I can't tell you the amount of times I've written about something, but I can't get an image because, we only use so many, like a certain, uh, like photo organization to get our download our photos from, and they might not be included and this and that. Or if it's a new product, there might not be a lot of photos of it out there. And, you also have to be aware of copyright and stuff. So I'd rather just use whatever the organization is giving us. Um, Especially if it's an event. A lot of times there aren't photos of it on the internet that are
Yeah.
eligible for us to do, like Super Bowl, for example. Super Bowl, there's, a lot of photos of past Super Bowls and, things like that. But, so the NFL always has galleries and things for journalists to download, licensed images. Um, but in terms of length and things, and tone, I cannot tell you the number of press releases I get, especially talking about AI or talking about technology or this and that or B2B or business. I don't know what they're saying. I have no idea because it's a different language. And I think the people that write it, they're just in it every day. So they understand in in their brain what they're saying. But I don't know anything about this topic and I don't know what you're saying. Um, Jargon is everywhere and it is so bad. Like I just I, and it's easy to get rid of. Like the jargon is what we call lazy writing. Like, when you can't think of something else to say, you go to the phrase or that everybody always just says. Like, and it doesn't make you stand out. It's, I think journalists really pay attention to when you explain a concept, um, not in a pandering way, but just, in words that people can understand. Just because you see a bunch of words in like a business magazine or in, business articles or this and that, like doesn't necessarily mean everyone understands them. And some journalists are better than others at explaining those. Um, so PR people kind of have to be the same way. I think they need to explain things a little bit better, especially when it comes to AI stuff, because I don't know, the jargon, man, it just doesn't work. So, and when something has too much jargon and I don't understand it, and I'm sure this goes for other journalists too, like we're not going to pay attention to it because it takes too much time to look things up, and unless it's something that's I think one of the things that I'd probably reference right now was oh, what was the other AI platform that came out a few weeks ago that was like a big thing?
DeepSeek? Mm-hmm.
DeepSeek.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I still don't know what DeepSeek is. I mean, I do, but why was it important? Like I got,
Yeah.
I got 10 pitches about DeepSeek, but I'm just like, I don't like what's the point? Like what is the deal with this? So we didn't really write about it because
I still
nobody gave
don't know
us
either, so you're not the only one.
nobody
Just
really
curious
gave
a lot.
us, yeah, like a good view, understandable view of what it
Mhm.
was and what it meant for PR. So
Yeah,
we ignored that one. But yeah, I mean, not everybody's an expert in everything, so you kind of have to
right.
remember um to put things in language
Hmm.
that people will understand. So
Yeah. That's another common mistake. We see it in press releases as well. It's using a lot of jargon. And, it's the PR professional's job to make sure that the press release is, understandable to the right audience. And, yeah, using a lot of corporate jargon or industry jargon is
mhm,
not going to help, get your press release a lot of coverage or, reach far. So, thank you so much
mhm.
for sharing that. So one last question is about press releases. Do you think companies should follow up after sending a press release? If so, how when should they do it and how should they do it?
This is my preference. If the honestly, I feel like the best thing to do is when you do that personal pitch with a journalist. And honestly, you really should know them before you pitch them a story. So, it's a long game. Like the chances of just like sending someone a press release and it getting picked up are very small. Um, But, if you send an email, introduce yourself, say, hey, just so I just wanted to talk to you. I represent this company. I know you write about this stuff. Just so you know, we have some stuff coming down the pipeline. You might see a press release from me in a couple of weeks about it. Just kind of introduce yourself. So the journalist is like, oh, cool. Like, glad to know you. Glad to know what you're all about. Um, and then if you do send a press release to someone in the media, give it a day. Like honestly, I have press releases pitches I haven't even looked at today because I'm doing other stuff. If you haven't heard from them in like a day or two, unless it's like very, very, very urgent, breaking news, that kind of stuff. We don't cover that stuff as much. Um, give the person a day or two. If you don't hear from them, then feel free to like send them something and just say, hey, did you see this? Is there, here are some angles that maybe you could use if you want to do a story on it. Just let me know. And the person will either reply, give them another day or two. They reply, they won't reply. If they don't reply, do not keep sending an email day in, day, because that will annoy the writer. Like
Mhm.
either A, they're on vacation, B, they're sick, or C, they just don't want to write about it. Or it's not even that they don't want to write about it, it might not be the right time. Like there's articles I've been pitched that I haven't wrote about for like 5 or 6 months. It just wasn't the right time. And then it was the right time. And then I remembered it and we went through it. Um, or you keep it on your radar. I really try to write everyone back and just be like, yes, I'll use this. No, I'm not using this. But it's hard to do that. Um, some people I'll write back and I'll say, hey, I like this topic, but it doesn't fit right now. I don't have time right now. Can you get back to me in 2 months? I know we all have a lot going on, but if you just write yourself a little post-it note, like get back to Nicole on April 19th, stick it somewhere with the topic, you never know. Then it might work out. But it's like the little things that you have to do. But I don't think blasting anyone's inbox is going to work. And don't call people either. Like, don't call them over and over and over again because people don't like that. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, calling to follow up, I get it. Some people are old school and they do that. And some people like getting phone calls. I don't mind talking sometimes, but overall, like it is far faster for me to just say yay or nay in an email than it is to pick up the phone and have a whole conversation. Um, so yeah, just like think about how you would want to be approached and the time you have and kind of go from there. But really, yeah, like follow up once, maybe twice. That's it.
Okay.
Like then
Yeah.
stop.
Feel like that's fair.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think so. I
Yeah.
think so too.
All right. Yeah, absolutely. And so let's um final thoughts. Do you have any advice for journalists, reporters covering your industry, marketing, communications, PR?
There's just so much. There's so many topics, there's so many different ways to cover it. I mean, there's so many different publications, so many different things to know. Um, I would say like try to focus on one niche, but also you don't want to corner yourself too much. Like I know some people that purely write about CTV or, they purely write about DEI. And I get it, that's good. Because you're really getting to know that whole sector. But I think for a journalist career, you like to kind of always be learning from the different things. Like I read about PR, but I got my start in business writing, writing about businesses, doing profiles, like everything kind of contributes to something else. So you're always learning. And I think too in the industry, like just reach out to people, even if they're most people in the industry are pretty down to earth. Even if they have like a VP or CE or like high title, people love talking about themselves. So I feel like always feel free to reach out and um, have some good questions on hand or, just say you have a couple minutes. And especially if you're a journalist, they totally want to talk to you because everybody loves publicity. So, um, you know, I think if you're younger, like don't be, or even just working in a newer industry, like don't be afraid to reach out to people that have worked in the industry for a while that can teach you a little bit about it. It's important.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you for sharing. And do you have any advice for people on the other side, professionals, PR professionals?
Oh, be kind, be patient. We are all doing a lot. Um, I mean, I've never really run into, anyone not being kind in the industry, but I have run into people that are impatient. And that's difficult because journalists are doing so much now. There used to be like six of us for every one of us, and now there's just one of us for every six of us. So, we're trying to do a whole bunch of different things. So just be patient, be kind. Everybody's kind of going through a lot right now. It has been cool. I've noticed some agencies recently that are, supporting journalism and the um, the way of scholarships for young journalists, who want to go on fellowships or go to school, which has been cool. Supporting, their safety, their access, things like that. I think it's important because we all need each other. So that's what
Yeah.
works.
Awesome. And this is a fun question. I read it on your LinkedIn. It's a viral story that you worked on. So I'll just let you talk about it. But what is Dingus Day?
Well, that's one of my favorites. That's from years ago. So I'm of Polish heritage, and Dingus Day is a Polish holiday. We basically call it the Polish St. Patrick's Day. It's the day after Easter, also known as Easter Monday, and it is mostly a Polish American ideal. But there's big parties in Buffalo, New York, where I grew up. There's big ones in Chicago, Detroit. And it's just like a big party. There's a lot of polka bands, there's Polish food, a lot of beer. Um, dancing and there's parades and other different things. Anderson Cooper actually talked about it once on his when he had his show, his afternoon show, and thought it was the funniest thing, and people were not happy about that. So because it's just it's a fun heritage holiday. But yeah, it's a fun time for people to just kind of let loose after the Lenten season and um, enjoy food and having a good time. So I just wanted more people to understand what it was.
Yeah, that's awesome. Sounds like a fun time. I mean, something I would be interested in going and attending.
It is. If you have a Monday evening off, it's a good place to be.
That's awesome. So lastly, what is the best way for listeners to connect with you?
As I was saying, email is great. Like I said, my email is listed on my LinkedIn. It's also listed on our website, which is prnewsonline.com. Um, LinkedIn, if you want to connect with me there, that's always a good thing to do.
Mhm.
I don't mind getting messages if I don't know you, you want to explain who you are, introduce yourself. That's great. But yeah, really, any kind of pitching, things like that. Email is the way to go for me. And that's if you don't feel like going to LinkedIn or our website, which you
Yeah.
should, it's just N Schuman at prnewsonline.com.
Thank you so much, Nicole, and have a great day.
Thank you. You too.
And that wraps up this episode of Media Coffee. A big thank you to Nicole Schuman for joining us and sharing her perspective and insights. We've covered a lot today, from the impact of AI on PR, why LinkedIn has become the new go-to newsroom, and the biggest PR mistakes like sending pitches with the wrong name. Yes, she's been called Norm before, or flooding journalists' inboxes with daily follow-ups. Nicole also stressed the importance of cutting out jargon. If a journalist doesn't understand your pitch in seconds, they're moving on. So if you enjoyed this, subscribe to the podcast and follow PR Newswire and Cision for more insights like this. Until next time, keep your pitches sharp and your press release clear. Thanks for listening.